Entrepreneurial Edge is brought to you by Business Banking from FNB, because small ideas can lead to big business. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, as always, we appreciate your feedback, so keep those emails coming to entrep@cnbcafrica.com. Now, still in the studio, I have with me Liz Zambonini, the CEO and founder of the Hope Factory. Now, it's an organization that trains and selects and brings on young entrepreneurs. Just give me an example, just an entrepreneur that goes through your hands. From the start, very briefly, to the finish of what happens to them.
So there can either be a potential entrepreneur, so somebody with a business idea, or they can be have an existing business which is in startup phase. Either way, they would go through a training and a mentoring process, which is sort of our first equipping phase. That gives them an opportunity to fully develop their business idea if it's a new business, or to work on their current business. It's a combination of business skills, technical skills, life skills, growing the entrepreneur as well as their business idea, because ultimately a business really comes down to the success of it, comes down to the entrepreneur themselves, you know, in those early days.
Well, that's one point I want to ask you. You have to select these entrepreneurs. When you're sitting down there talking to people, what do you look for?
One of the key things is obviously commitment to the process, and passion, you know, and determination. You know, those are the couple of key personal characteristics I would look for. There are other things that we look for, such as obviously, you know, the business idea. They really want to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people actually would prefer to just look for a job. So, you know, it's in trying to find who actually really wants to be an entrepreneur and who's just trying to put food on the table. Not to say that necessity-driven entrepreneurs are not also critical to the success of the economy, and we're there to help both. But either way, they have to have that, you know, that steel in the eyes.
But how do you pick that? I mean, that's the question. It must be quite a difficult one, because myself, I mean, I train journalists, and I often think when I'm first meeting a journalist, I'm looking at them thinking, are they going to make it? Are they not? Have they got the right stuff? And I'll be quite honest with you, down the years, sometimes I saw journalists and I thought, well, maybe they're not going to make it. And then many months later, having worked with them, I suddenly thought, now I see it. Isn't there a danger sometimes that people can be tossed to one side, even though they perhaps could have been in the long term?
There is, which is why we go with a very broad-based approach. It's almost, if you can imagine, like a funnel. So we're quite broad in our initial selection of people who can come onto the program, and they either, if they're a potential entrepreneur, it's a 20-week program, or if they have an existing business, it's a 12-week program. And so although there's the initial selection with interviews and all of that to filter out the first, you know, round, they also then have the opportunity during those 12 or 20 weeks to work very closely with a business mentor and with trainers, and we then get an opportunity to really see who they are. And only at the end of that do we do an actual further selection to see if they can partake in the rest of our entrepreneur support program, where we would provide for them things like CapEx investments into their business, further mentoring, and a whole bouquet of services.
No, it's one of the great ironies of life that you were a person who got out of a garage, and now you're trying to teach the rest of the world how to get out of a garage. But what do you think in this modern day and age of difficult economic times it takes to make a real tough entrepreneur?
I think it takes a lot of determination. You know, maybe I'm just the eternal optimist, but I too tend to think if you can keep pushing long and hard enough, you generally get your path to success. I think you only really fail when you give up. So that for me is number one. Number two, I think key to this is strategic business mentoring that can make or break the success of a business. You know, in South Africa, we don't have a lot of good strategic business mentoring, and we have one of the highest failure rates of businesses in the world. You know, alongside Romania and the Gaza Strip, only 1.8% of people will make it past 3.5 years.
It's incredible, actually, when you think about the amount of people that are trying to make it. What kind of people do you take in as entrepreneurs? I mean, what are their sort of backgrounds? What sort of entrepreneurial work do they want to do?
Look, we are very focused around what we call the grassroots entrepreneur. So people really, literally from the garage stages. Also, as we are part of enterprise development within South Africa, they must be, you know, black, Indian or coloured entrepreneurs, so that they do comply with BEE. And so that's our target market. And generally we are focused on the youth, people under the age of 40.
Because that is something that is peculiar to this country, is the fact that each business has an obligation to have black ownership.
Yes.
Now, essentially, you're saying also your business, I understand that if I want points towards achieving and complying with that ownership, I can invest in your business and get those points.
Yes.
How does that work?
On the scorecard, there's obviously the 7 categories, and we fall under enterprise development, which is really set up by government to invest in growing black businesses. But what we have found is that a lot of companies don't have the resources or really the development skills to be able to grow those businesses. So we act almost as a funnel for them. So the money that is invested into our business, we use all of it to invest in other people's businesses, whether that's through direct like a capex investment, or whether that's through providing strategic business mentoring to that business, or helping them get their record keeping right so that they can be audited. Whatever the service offering is, that's paid for through enterprise development funding that companies invest within the Hope Factory.
In the class of entrepreneurs of 2011, what's the greatest weakness you're finding?
The greatest weakness is really the education level that is being produced within our primary and secondary schools. And I'm sorry to say it, but that's the truth. People who have got maths to matric, in almost every single class, I will have 1/3 of the class who cannot use a calculator and who can't even measure 5 centimeters on the ruler. They will start at 1 and go to 5 instead of starting at 0 and go to 5. Now, I just found that astounding. Now, if I had better quality coming in, I think the country is doing all of our entrepreneurs a disservice, because if we had better quality to work from, we would obviously be able to build from a far higher platform to take them a lot further.
And on the other side, what about, have you got any great success stories that have sprung from your Hope Factory in Cape Town?
Yes. We've got a lot of success stories. I mean, from startup to where we are now. I'll give you an example of a startup one. We've got a lady who started a little. She's only been going for a couple of months now, but she does manicures and pedicures and things like that. She rented for 500 Rand a month a little table and chair within a hair salon in the Motherwell township just outside of PE. And in her first 3 weeks, she had 103 clients, and she's charging very almost Joburg kind of city-related rates, and so she's doing incredibly well. Now her business just took off, and we've got other people who somebody doing screen printing, somebody in upholstery who now employing 3 or 4 others, 5 or 6 others, and growing their business.
But then again, on the other hand, I know this is the core of your business, but do you really think entrepreneurs need to be trained? I mean, a friend of the family was a very good entrepreneur. He said to me the key to success was knowing how many beans make 5, and I said 5 because there you are, you're halfway. But you see what I'm saying, that a lot of people are born entrepreneurs, and no matter what happens, they'll make it. And some people are not born that way, and whatever happens, they won't make it. What's your view?
My view is that, yes, there has to be something intrinsically in you. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. It is a small percentage of the population. However, every entrepreneur, I believe, would do so much better if they did have especially key strategic business mentoring. And I know that there have been studies done around the world, and if you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they will all say that they had 1 or 2 key mentors in their life that helped them through those times. And it's not just around giving business advice. Part of it is just sometimes being a shoulder to cry on on a bad day.
That's one thing I want to ask you. Do people come back to you after, say, 3 months and say, listen, I'm sorry, I can't take it, I'm sorry? What do you do then? What do you say to them?
That's where you have to have the connection with almost one says with the community, and it's that's part of one of our things that we have now is what we call a hub, where we have where we provide entrepreneurs with a place to actually run their business from and getting them out of the garage. And so they're actually then with their fellow entrepreneurs, so they can even just say to their friend who's in a business, I'm having such a bad day, and their friend can give them encouragement. Often we'll find they'll come back to their trainer who taught them 6 months or a year ago, and their trainer will just give them that extra burst of encouragement. I think there's a lot of, I know this sounds a bit soft, but there's a lot of love and support within the Hope Factory. There is a nurturing environment, maybe because we've got a lot of women, I don't know, but there is that. but then there's also the tough love side of it, where out the nest the bird must fly.
And finally, as I said to you just earlier in the program, I do a lot of mentoring of journalists, and I'd like to be remembered as a journalist who trained people. How do you want to be remembered as an entrepreneur?
I think I'd like to be remembered as somebody who invested in other people and made a difference within South Africa, especially through job creation, through the growth of business.
Laudable, laudable, and best of luck. Thank you very much, Liz Zambonini, the guiding spirit and founder of the Hope Factory.